Hi, I'm David Johnson, and I'm a fellow in the International Relations Department at the LSE. I'm happy to introduce my recent contribution to Review of International Studies, which is entitled Reconstructing Imperialism, From the New Imperialism to the New Geopolitics. The paper offers a critical reconstruction of the classical theories of imperialism and their reception in the discipline of international relations. I argue that the classical theories of imperialism, as originally formulated from the turn of the 20th century to the First World War, approach the problem of imperialism as a historically specific conjuncture. That is to say, the theory of imperialism sought to analyze the interaction of industrial capitalist development and geopolitical conflict in the age of a disintegrating British imperial order and the rise of inter-imperial rivalries. However, I argue that this conjunctural nature of the classical theories has been obscured and distorted over time. It has been misread as a general theory of international relations, which it avowedly was not, and it has been misread as an attempt exclusively to explain formal colonial expansion, which it also avowedly was not. Given our own contemporary conjuncture of a re-emergent multipolarity, escalating geopolitical tensions, and war, this paper seeks to reconstruct and clarify the classical theories of imperialism and to suggest how these theories might help to inform and inspire analyses of our own times. The paper is broken down into 3 sections. The first and longest section takes a deep dive into the origins of the theory of imperialism and demonstrates that this theoretical discourse emerged at a very specific moment to grapple with a very specific set of problems in the global political economy of industrial capitalist development. In essence, by the end of the 19th century, industrializing societies were encountering increasingly traumatic crises of accumulation, which were understood to be a function of chronic market disequilibria, variously conceptualized as overproduction or underconsumption. In fact, the first theorists of imperialism were advocates, not critics, of the idea that imperial expansion might be an effective solution to crises of capitalist accumulation. The most well-known theorists of imperialism, notably the British economist John Hobson and the Russian revolutionary Vladimir Lenin, are best understood as critics of these earlier advocates for imperialism. My reconstruction of a range of theoretical arguments in the first section of the paper sets out to establish the situated and conjunctural nature of the classical theories of imperialism. It covers the origins of the theory and its elaboration into liberal reformist and Marxist revolutionary variants. The second section of the paper turns to the question of how the classical theories of imperialism were eroded and distorted over time by scholars impatient with the radical implications of earlier debates typified by Hobson and Lenin. I call this a counter-revolution in theory. This section reviews a range of literature from the interwar period and demonstrates how the capaciousness of the classical conceptions were variously narrowed, decontextualized, or dismissed. I'm particularly keen in this section to show how the idea of imperialism began to lose its conjunctural specificity and to take on a more general meaning as a synonym for colonialism. This reformulation of imperialism as colonialism arguably remains entrenched to this day. It is problematic not only because it is ahistorical, but also because it enabled generations of post-war international theorists to dismiss the idea of imperialism as irrelevant to an era characterized by decolonization and the emergence of a system of sovereign states. The third and final move of the paper is to show how this reductive reformulation of imperialism has been received in post-war international relations theory. I cover 3 standard works that treat the question of imperialism head-on. For example, I examine Kenneth Waltz's extensive critical discussion of the classical theories and show how his critique misses the mark. Perhaps predictably, Waltz reads the work of Hobson and Lenin as attempts to propound a general theory of international relations. In other words, he projects his own transhistorical project onto their work and erases its conjunctural specificity. He thus puzzles over how imperialism, which for him goes back to ancient times, could be driven by capitalism, a much more recent historical phenomenon. I show how Lenin anticipates and dispels this type of criticism well in advance. The paper concludes by outlining a number of implications that flow from a reconstruction of the classical theories of imperialism for contemporary studies. I hope the paper will help scholars, practitioners, and activists in grappling with contemporary forms of imperialism and global turbulence. I also hope you'll get in touch if you want to share your thoughts, comments, or criticisms of the paper. I'll be very happy to receive them. Thank you.